As a rogue, it's easy for me to spot the perfect mark. I get anything I want with a little distraction and patience. But as a role player, screw patience. I can't wait for my Dungeon Crate to arrive every month. Dungeon Crate brings me amazing RPG accessories like dice, minis, adventures, and lots more. And rumor has it around the guilds you also get a digital crate with even more secret extras. Dungeon Crate has what I want. Take what you deserve and become a member of Dungeon Crate today at dungeoncrate.com.
From the haunted heartland in Omaha, Nebraska, welcome one and all to another episode of the Necronomicast. My name is Brian Corey, and I have a phenomenal show for you this evening. My guest for this episode is the legendary special effects wizard, Kevin Yagher. Yeah, that's right, Kevin Yagher, the man who created the Chucky doll from Child's Play, Freddy Krueger's makeup, the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt, and the special effects from huge Hollywood blockbusters like Face Off and the Mission Impossible franchise. He's here with me for a late night conversation. We're going to talk about what it's like to work with Hollywood stars like Robert Englund, Nicolas Cage, and Tom Cruise. So I invite you, dear listeners, to turn down the lights and relax while you join me for a late night conversation with Kevin Yagher here on the Necronomicast. And now calling in on the Necronomicast hotline from Los Angeles, California, horror legend, I'm going to say it, horror legend, living legend, Kevin Yagher. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, man. I'm super excited to have you on the program. And thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And we're having this late night conversation to talk about your role in some of the great horror franchises and your role in putting some great images and some effects on the screen. I'm really excited.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here. You know, it's funny when you introduce me as a legend, that to me just means old man.
Yeah, I got something that'll make you feel real old. I was kind of looking through my notes, and then I noticed on Facebook today, 32 years ago today, Nightmare on Elm Street Ford Dream Master was released.
Oh, you're kidding. Was actually, that was the premiere, 32 years. Wow.
32 years
ago.
All
that stuff, it does feel like, like anything in life, it feels like it just happened yesterday, but it also feels like eons ago, so it's that kind of weird mix of, boy, that was a long time ago. But then I start looking through, I'm doing an article for, a magazine or something. I'll look through pictures and it just brings me back. And the next thing I feel like it just happened yesterday. It's funny how time works that way. But 32 years, yeah, I've been in this town in Los Angeles working since 1983. Came out when I was 20, just turned 21 or something. So what is that? 30? Gosh, that's 37 years ago. Yeah. So it's been a long time, but a happy time.
Yeah, I was just thinking about when I saw that it was 32 years ago. I remember that day because that weekend, sometime this weekend, 32 years ago, my mom bought me and my friend Paul tickets to go see Nightmare 4 because I was not old enough for an R-rated film. Certainly mature enough, but not old enough legally.
Right.
And we couldn't drive ourselves to the theater. So Mom drove us to the mall to go see Nightmare 4 here in Omaha. Yeah.
And was she concerned at all about you being exposed to, Freddy and all that stuff? And was she just like, did she want to see it first with you, or did she just let you go?
No, she was pretty hip, but at the same time, my parents, and I've said this story 100 times on the show, so I apologize, dear listeners, but my parents were older. They were of the older generation. Like my parents, my dad was 70 when I was born, and my mom was 40.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Right. So they were like old school. They didn't follow a lot of the current trends, and so they're like, "Oh, we're taking Brian and his friend to the show,"
Yes, exactly.
It's a scary one.
Yeah, I mean, my brother and I, my brothers and I, my cousins, and we got dropped off a lot that way too. I mean, we saw things that we probably shouldn't have been. Back, I think when I was pretty young, they didn't have a rating. I think if I remember, I mean, there were X-rated films obviously out there, but I don't remember being an R rating, or I don't know when that came in. I think it was when I was really young. It was before that. I was before that. So we got dropped off. We saw a lot of things. I mean, I remember just seeing, my first nudity on a Clint Eastwood film or something. I think it was, what was that one he played? Josie Wales, that one.
Sure.
And there's, a breast, or whatever that you see. And it was like, it was kind of, wow, as a young kid. So we're happy to see anything,
yeah.
as youngsters, but yeah, that was, it's funny, now it's stricter, which I think is good. But so what did you think when you saw it?
Oh, Nightmare 4?
Yeah.
Oh, we were huge Freddy fans, man, because, like my first, a little bit ago, a couple weeks ago, I interviewed Larry Zerner for the show, and I was telling him something similar that you just told me. I saw my first booby.
Yeah.
See,
yes,
when I saw that movie.
Yeah, when you're a kid, that's what you call it, right? You call it that funny name that no one. If you ever told that to your wife or something, what did you call my breast? It's a breast, okay? It's not a booby, it's a breast.
Right.
But yeah, that's what you call them when you're a kid.
Right. So like when we were sitting around the schoolyard, there was here in Omaha, probably just like the playgrounds across the country back in the 80s, you were in like the Freddy camp or you were in a Jason camp. People didn't start jumping back onto the Michael Myers bandwagon in our age group until Halloween 4 came out. But you were like hardcore Freddy, you were hardcore Jason. And so I was kind of walking the line a little bit because Jason movies were totally cool. We'll talk about Final Chapter, your work on that in a little bit. But Freddy, the excitement of these new movies, and Freddy was wisecracking. The murders were horrific, very imaginative, cool special effects. So when I saw it, I thought Dream Warriors was the coolest thing ever. And then, and then Dream Master comes out and we're like, holy shit. And we had the directing eye of Rennie Harlan, which was super exciting. So, did I like it? Loved it, man. And plus we were kids, it was great. So you had seen the other movies on video or whatever, the other like 1 through 3 before you saw 4? Yeah, I think 4 was the first one I saw in the theater. That would put me at about 13. I turned 14.
So you hadn't seen, you didn't know anything about Freddy. I mean, you said you were fans, but did you see the other films on VHS or whatever when you were younger?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd be familiar with that.
Yeah, that was the first one I saw in the theater. 3 we saw on video. 1, 2, and 3 we saw on video, and 4 was the first one I saw because I was 13 when that one came out.
And that's pretty awesome on a big screen to see, because it's different on a television. You're whatever. I mean, it can be kind of neat. You're in the dark with your friends, watching at home, but it's nice to see it with an audience, and to get the bigness of it. And that's the perfect one to see in the theater, I think.
Oh yeah. And what's neat about places nowadays, like the Alamo Draft House, things like that, these movie theaters that feature programming, like they'll bring old movies and show them on the big screen, because I never saw Die Hard on the big screen.
Right. Oh yes.
And that one needed to be on the big screen.
It totally did.
I never saw Halloween on the big screen until they brought it in. I saw Jaws on the big screen. That's my favorite movie of all time. So
really?
So seeing
one of mine too.
Yeah. So when these movies come in that were made during my childhood or before, that I never had the opportunity to see on anything but like an old 32-inch TV when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
You mentioned Jaws because it is one of my favorites too, and I think all those kind of films really had an influence on me as far as getting into creatures. You go back now and you look at the shark, and it's obviously a big rubber mechanical thing, and I'm so glad that Spielberg didn't go back and do the Lucas thing and recreate everything. He did do this on E.T. I don't know if you've seen, but he's gone back in and added some digital work on E.T. And I'm just happy that he didn't touch things. I think film should be left alone. Even Star Wars, going back is a bit of a cheat. And it also, if you go back and look at what Lucas did on Star Wars 1, 2, and 3, if you go back, even that stuff by now, and he did this, I think 15, 20 years ago, he went back and fixed things he didn't like.
Right.
They still age. I mean, you go back now and look at it looks like really bad early CGI. So, it's if you're going to wait for another 30 years or something and refix them. But I just say leave them alone, because you're not going to get. I guess he did that whole thing because he was rebooting his Star Wars. He was getting ready for Phantom Menace and all these other ones coming out. But
I know
Jaws was there. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I know you could go back now and see, like Spielberg, he took the guns out from the investigators' hands, but then I think you can get the cut with the original cut without the flashlights added in. I think he was nervous about having the guns in the film, but what you're saying about Jaws, I was even going to ask you, like as a special effects guy, when you see something like Jaws, and it's easy to with your eye to kind of pick out things. You know, my eye's a lot different because I don't work in that medium. I just see, you know, the magic of Hollywood on the screen. When you're building something, building an animatronic shark. Now I know you're responsible for the creation of Chucky.
Yeah.
Puppet. On a grand scale like a shark, I couldn't imagine that was just as a technological, as an engineering standpoint. I bet it was just like,
you know, it was. I mean, you've heard the stories. I mean, it's like you never want to shoot on water. You never want to shoot with children or animals or something else. And that's the kind of thing. And Jaws sort of was like the one that really was just a disaster as far as shooting for Spielberg. And the funny thing is, I was bidding on Free Willy a way back. Oh. And there was a guy that had done the whale for Star Trek 4, which is a film my wife actually stars in, about the whale. And I can't remember his name. Anyway, it'll come to me. But and I was super nervous about doing Free Willy because it was underwater, and I had an experience, animatronic experience, but not anything to do with underwater stuff. And I figured, I just would have done it. I mean, I haven't, necessarily failed in any film I've attempted. They've been difficult, but I knew that was going to be difficult. And then, especially after hearing the stories on Jaws and how, just horrible it was, and the shark was always breaking down, I'm sure due to a lot of water leakage and stuff like that, trying to find buoyancy and, all those problems that you have. I'm glad though, if you did say went back in, like early CGI wasn't great, if you go back and look at it now, and I think it would scream worse if they had made it with early CGI than with the early practical effects. You see stuff like, the rubber teeth on the jaws now, or you see the way that the jaw, if you look at a real shark, a real great white, out of the water chomping or whatever, and then you see this thing, there's a world of difference, but it still plays better, I think, because it was actually there on the set. It was actually coming down on Robert Shaw's legs, and even though he was in pain, he was interacting with it. And something about CGI, it's getting better all the time. Computer, digital work is getting fantastic. But even if you look at the first Planet of the Apes that was done, the reboot with Andy Serkis, doing all the acting, and then you look at the latest one, it just improved over how long it's been 10 years since from the first to the more recent one. Right. So it's always getting better. But I think early stuff would have probably just screamed effects if you saw it in retrospect. You see it now, but I think Jaws still kind of works because it's still there, even though and the way that they cut it too. And the whole story that that Spielberg, it was breaking so much that he had to shoot around it. These are old Jaws stories, and therefore it became a scarier film because it was leaving it all up to people's imagination. And I think that still plays today. I think overexposure, and the thing with Freddy, he started, I worked on the first one I did was part 2, and this goes for part 1 and 2. I think they were dark. Jacques Haitkin I believe was the DP, if I remember right. And he lit things pretty dark, and it gave it a really spooky, scary, ominous feel. And you didn't really see Freddy when you saw him. You didn't really see him. And then later, as things went on, especially in films like part 4, he was brightly lit in a lot of situations, and that's fine, because it's a progression of how things go. We've already seen him. So, but I think they should still try to make things a little more darker, scarier, more nightmarish, no pun intended, but more nightmarish, with Freddy's lighting and stuff like that, and how they expose. And another thing that happens in all horror films, and this goes for Chucky that I've worked on and Freddy, is that they get one laugh, they get one comic relief. There's a scene in Child's Play 1 where Chucky's making his way up to the apartment to get to Andy Barclay, and he's left he looks like he's been left in an elevator, and this old couple gets on the elevator, and as they get off, they look back, and someone left their doll here, and then the woman says, "What an ugly doll." And Chucky, just at a frame, because it was our doll Chucky, it wasn't an animatronic, but just as the head got out of frame, because the elevator starts to go up, Chucky says, "Fuck you." I don't know if I can say that, to bleep me, sure. But he says the F-bomb. Right. And it's hilarious. So it gets a huge laugh in the theaters, and everyone takes note of that. Well, then they think, okay, more of that. Instead of doing 1 or 2 in the next film, they just bombard it with more jokes, and it's not anyone's fault. Don Mancini, wrote, I think, all of these, and it wasn't his fault. He just went with the flow, and that's what happens. And I find that with horror, and then you get that mix of horror and comedy. Problem is, it can get out of hand, and then it just becomes, Freddy can become just a jokester, like a clown almost, and you miss that scary stuff. So some of the reboot, like I never saw Nightmare on Elm Street, the reboot, but what I understand it to be was more frightening and more real. And then you can go the opposite way. Well, another actor's not going to be Freddy no matter what you do. In fact, on Nightmare 2, they tried to replace him at one point. And because they couldn't make Robert Englund's deal, who plays Freddy, couldn't make his deal, so they tried to replace him. And this happens a lot. Like I did the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. They try to replace his voice at one point, and usually they get smart after they see auditions and they go back to the original guy. But anyway, talking about darkness and keeping things creepy, I still think there's a way to mix it and not go so far that you end up it becoming a farce and just becomes kind of a joke to watch. I was going to say about these reboots, they do have a more serious tone to them. When they start to, come back and remake these films, they try to make it creepier and realer. But, there's got to be a way to mix it and not lose the original, Anyway, I don't know what I'm saying, but hope you understand.
No, I totally understand. And I appreciate everything that you're saying about the reboots and everything, because I think they had the right thing in mind, because they kind of looked at the progression like a Friday the 13th. They launch him into space. All this stuff. So okay, so and then Freddy Krueger in later installments, he's playing Nintendo games and things like that. I mean, you kind of get away from the scares and everything. I think it was admirable that they were working in trying to return to the roots, kind of gritty and dark. But there's also you got to bounce a little bit, because there were things in those earlier movies that people really did enjoy, and it harkened back to the 80s and kind of the sensibilities of the movie going public at the time. Now, man, you're talking, you're like, you worked on like 5 of the big horror icons. You were, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Pinhead, Chucky, and then you mentioned the Crypt Keeper.
The Crypt Keeper, yeah. And if you want to count Tiffany from Bride of Chucky, that would make it 6.
Oh, sure.
I thought about that the other day, thinking, wow. I mean, I don't know anybody else who's done that. I mean, I was able to, and again, I didn't. Chucky was my original creation, but Freddy was not. However, I redesigned him, and the one that I did is my favorite on part 2. The Chuck Russell wanted to change Freddy and make him more like Robert Englund on part 3, I think.
Okay.
Was it? Oh wait, Dream Warriors is 3.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And then on 4, I tried to. I get them mixed up. On 4, I tried to go back towards 2 a little bit more, because it was always my favorite. He was smoother. I really studied a lot of. It was my first film, so I was trying to do the best job. I was trying to make it look more realistic. I had burn medical manuals. I went to UCLA or something and went to their library and the bookstore actually, and I purchased a burn manual and just studied everything. And that makeup was kind of smoother, and I did try to incorporate some more bone structure, because you saw in some of these, people that were severely burned, that a lot of their bone structure, the muscle had been burned away, and you could see their the cheekbones and the brows and things like that. So, I was really trying to make it great, and I think it really turned out well. And that's the one that seems to be, from what I understand from the fan letters and things that I get, emails I get, is that's their favorite, and I just think it's because it's a combination of the lighting and the film itself. And then also, I think I was just more subtle then, and I think it worked well, but yeah, I was thinking back about the horror icons, all those that you mentioned, starting with a very young age, I worked for, Greg Canham, and he had Friday the 13th part 4, the final chapter, and then he lost the show. We were busy doing Ozzy Osbourne's Bark at the Moon, and he was out of town a lot.
Oh, you worked on that too?
Yeah, I did Ozzy's teeth and his fingers for Greg, and then I helped him apply it. We did this big Life magazine spread where he's holding his youngest daughter, not the popular one, not the one that's on the show, but the very first daughter. She's the oldest of all 3 kids, and she was just, I think, maybe 6 months old, and he was maybe younger than that. And he holds her. If you look it up, he's holding her in his arms, and he kept freaking out that he was, well, first of all, when we came in to apply the makeup, he had just done a whole concert the night before, and he was meant to that evening that we were doing his makeup, that after the shoot, he was going to get ready and go present at the MTV Awards, which he blew off and eventually blew up. But when we first got in the chair, he still had his makeup on. He still had his hair was all kind of tattered, but it was still made up. I think he was just in a bathrobe, and he looked like, hell warmed over. He really did. He was just, his makeup was all smeared, and he immediately ordered three, I think, double shots of cognac. So 6 cognacs basically, and downed them in 2 seconds. Just like boom, boom, boom. And he's like, all right, now I feel great. Let's get going. And so we started the makeup, and then, as anyone who's had a drink or two knows that if you don't keep drinking, you start to crash. And so he began to kind of crash, and we got the makeup on him, but he began to get a little bit irritable, and we went and shot it. And I'm telling you, I think Annie Leibovitz, the famous photographer, shot this. I remember as a female photographer, but I thought it was her. But anyway, so he basically lets her take 30 shots maybe, and that was it. And he kept saying, my daughter's gonna wake up. And Sharon was there. Sharon was lovely. She was like she was kind of chubby then, and she had this pink pantsuit kind of thing. And she was just like his mom, actually, or his mom, as they say. She was always like, oh, Ozzy, it's going to be fine. Just sit still, doing all that kind of thing. And so, but he kept saying, no, she's going to wake up and she's going to get scared. Well, the kid, if she woke up, wouldn't, she was so young, maybe again, 4 months, wouldn't have been able to recognize the teeth. And, we learn to be scared of teeth, as we get old. We don't know anything. She wouldn't know anything. So anyway, so that was kind of it for him. 30 shots. I'm not kidding. I think it was literally 1 or 2 rolls of film. So maybe 30 to 60 shots. And she was shooting quickly, and that was it. He just passed the baby off, ran back to the thing. We had to grab our kits, Greg Cannon. We went back to the hotel room. By the time we got there, he was already in the shower. So he comes out, he's ripped the wig, tore the wig. And there's a famous, I think her name is, I forgot, Josephine something, but she made all the Planet of the Apes wigs. And so Greg was just horrified that his wig had been torn, that he did for Ozzy. And then, he tried to rip the appliances off, and they were still stuck down to him. And he was just miserable. And so we spent a little time trying to get them off, and, it was not easy going. And then finally he just said, that's it. And so he got, I'll just get the rest off in the shower. And this stuff you cannot get off in the shower. It's like adhered to you. It's almost like super glue in a sense of not coming off unless you have a solvent. So he went off, and Greg just goes, let's get out of here. I'm not going to stick around and wait to see what he looks like after, half an hour. He may never come out again. He may go to sleep. Who knows? And he during the time we were doing the makeup, he blew off the MTV, awards he was supposed to present. So anyway, we just left him with a small bottle of remover and split. So I guess he got it off, because I've seen him since, and there's no pieces of foam latex still stuck to his face. No. So that was yours. But anyway, I don't know how to get on that. But so I was talking about Friday the 13th. So Greg was doing that. And eventually the producers were a little upset because he wasn't there as much, for meetings and things. And I ended up taking a lot of the meetings. So they eventually let him go. And he was like, I'm fine with that. So I stayed on, because I was in the middle of working on Jason's makeup with a sculptor named Jim Cagle, who sculpted it. And then Tom Savini came in, because he had worked with Joe Zito, who directed it. And Tom came in and, picked up where Greg left off. And we had a lot of the effects already kind of worked out. So Tom was really cool about, there's an effect at the beginning where this hitchhiker gets stabbed to the neck by Jason. Yeah. That was my gag. And there were several. I worked on the hand splitting, where he gets the machete through the hand, and all that stuff. And then the head, falls in the machete, and it gets I think it's another machete, but anyway, it gets sliced. And I was working on all those. I was painting all the Jason parts, and then I got to pre-paint and apply Jason's makeup to Ted White. And there's a story in there, but Ted getting really angry at me one night, but I'll go into that later if you want to hear it.
Yeah, because there's I'm like, oh my God, this sounds incredible. This sounds incredible. So so back to Ozzy Osbourne. Now this was full werewolf makeup for Bark at the Moon.
I mean, it was a prosthetic that fit from his forehead to his ears. I think he had
and
he had ear tips too, and then teeth, and then fingernails. Yeah.
That's
finger
awesome.
Extension.
How exciting. I didn't know you worked on that. So he's getting drunk in the chair, because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because you've got Ted White, Jason in the chair. You've got Ozzy Osbourne in the chair. You've got you've got Robert Englund in the chair. You've got Christopher Walken in the chair.
Yes.
So what's it like? I'm sure a lot of these practical effects take hours to put on these people, and depending on their personality, where they are that day, their level of sobriety, what pharmaceuticals they've gotten in their system,
which is a factor. Absolutely.
So you've got to be part wrangler, you've got to be part babysitter, or you got to be part, I don't know, Navy SEAL to calm them down. I mean,
well, you heard the story about the Navy SEAL and Jim Carrey, haven't you? Because that was like an 8 to 12 hour makeup on the Grinch. And Jim actually, he was freaking out. And hold on, do you mind if the phone rings in the background?
No, I don't care.
Okay. So again, Jim was, freaking out. And so they brought in because he was in the makeup, I think, at least 4 or 5 times a week. They gave him 3 days off. I remember he had 3 days off. I didn't work on it. This is a makeup that Rick Baker did and won an Academy Award for it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so going through this, and he's covered from head to toe. I mean, he's got a suit on, he's got prosthetics on, he's got hands, everything. His teeth are covered and his eyeballs are covered with contact lenses. So I can't imagine it day after day after day. And he's in every scene. Mm-hmm. So even if they gave him time off, he was just going nuts. So they brought in a Navy SEAL guy, actually, to calm him down and tell him how to work. And, because these guys have to deal with every situation possible, underwater and fire, whatever. So he just kind of is able to help Jim out. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because Robert Englund, for me, training started really, I hadn't done that many makeups in a row. I'd worked on shows with Greg, and I got to work a little bit with Rick Baker on Michael Jackson's Thriller, which was kind of fun. I'm actually in the video chasing Michael around a little bit. So, I got these little things that were awesome. And then we got Friday the 13th, and I must have put on Jason's makeup, I would think maybe 8, 9 times, because he wears the mask a lot. So we put him in a mask, a latex mask that only the back would show, and then we'd have the mask. Mm-hmm. So Ted didn't have to do the makeup all the time. But then, we did for the close-ups, I think I maybe put the makeup on him, like 8 times. I also did, what's his name? I'm a blank here.
Which movie?
Friday the 13th, Part 4, the little kid. I can't remember.
Oh, Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman. Sorry. Yeah, I'll start over. I also did Corey Feldman's, makeup bald cap, when he chops his hair and stuff like that. So I was bouncing back between those two. Anyway, so what was I saying now? I totally blew it. You have to cut this out. What was I talking about? Oh,
we were talking, about wrangling people in the chair and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Friday the 13th, Ted White.
Yes. Oh, damn it.
Robert Englund was a good guy.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm looking out my window, and somebody comes by and rings the bell. That's what that thing was, and I'm trying to figure out who it is. I should just not look out the window.
I'm wrangling you back into the conversation.
Okay, yeah. So cut all that crap out. We'll start.
Right.
So anyway, my training was with to do it beyond the 8 times I did it on Ted White, the Jason makeup, was with Robert. And if you know Robert, if you've ever seen interviews, he's full of life. He's a talker. He's a great storyteller. Problem is that when you sit him down for makeup, that doesn't stop. I mean, he just keeps, talking to you, to anybody who comes in, to their actors, and he's hard to get him to sit still, especially when you're laying down edges. Thank God this was a burn makeup, because if I made a mistake, I roll an edge, it's an extra wrinkle, right? So I got away with a lot of that. But he also, the training that I got was great, because he was a moving target. And so from then on, anybody I had in the chair has never really moved so much. I mean, like Robert, they pretty much will sit still when you ask them to. But I just got used to that, and I didn't want to, some makeup artists would actually say, Robert, sit down, or they put their makeup brushes down and say, I'll be back when you decide to behave yourself or settle down or whatever. And I've had to kind of do that a couple times. I did that with some bigger name stars a couple times. I've had to walk away from them at one point, because of usually sometimes it's abuse, sometimes it's just a crappy attitude that they have, and you're there to try to help them, and they can turn on you just because they're angry, they're hot, they're hungry, whatever. Yeah. But a lot of makeup artists get beat up because you immediately come and sit them in the chair, and the next thing you know, you're the best friend. You're smelling their morning breath, you're picking boogers out of their eyes, you're doing all those kind of things, and you get to know them quite quickly. And then they, like a sibling, they begin to you hurt the ones you love, right? So they end up kind of abusing you, and that happens a lot. And I don't put up with that in my old age anymore, but when I was young, you put up with it. And with Robert, he was always kind to me. We became fast friends. He was at my wedding. We were really, good with each other, but he just was a talker, and is one of those things. And it actually really did help me. I mean, he even did things like, I'd say, okay, they're, at lunchtime, we'd break for lunch a Nightmare 2, and it's okay, they're serving barbecue chicken. Please do not eat that. And if you do, cut it up in little bits and then put it in your mouth. Well, that was completely ignored. I remember he just ignored me. I remember walking by, and he's sitting there talking, with somebody, and he's just full on mouth and lipping this, this chicken leg. And there's stuff all over his face,
right?
And when he got back to the chair, the grease of that just lifted the appliance, and so I think I had to take part of it off and like redo his chin or something. But it's a pain in the butt for makeup artists sometimes. But it was really, really good training, I mean, and the exchange that I got was just fantastic stories, and getting to know Robert, who's just really a lovely man. He's really just a great guy. But then you get that kind of training, and then again, other people aren't so great. Some people are and most I find that younger actors who are inexperienced are fantastic. It's when you get actors who have gotten a lot of fame and they suddenly, think that they're better than everybody and everything around them, and they just get they can get abusive, and so you kind of have to teach them and train them almost, and, I've heard stories a lot of times of that makeup effects guys will just sit down and go, listen, this happened. I mean, actually, going back to Jim Carrey, a story that I heard from Rick Baker actually was that, Kazu, I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but he did the Darkest Hour makeup and won an Academy Award, on Gary Oldman recently. But on the Grinch, because Jim Carrey was going through so much, difficulty wearing this makeup, he was becoming a little hard on Kazu, and Kazu ended up quitting the show. And then Rick had to kind of sit down, Jim, and say, listen, because he said, what happened? I want him back. He said, no, he's not coming back. That's it. You just pissed him off. He's done. And he said, what if I apologize? I said, you need to apologize to him. You need to apologize to him. And when he says sit down, you need to be kind to him, because we're working our asses off. And, this is extremely hard work, and we're all in here to do this together, and no one deserves this. So Jim did, sent him flowers or did something and made up for it. And then they finished the picture. But that's kind of that training of an actor, and they almost don't know they're doing it. Some of them really don't know. They're not aware of it. They're just so tired, But I've noticed if you stand up to some actors who can become bullies, you get their attention, and then they also, and I've threatened to quit, and then I had the same kind of situation, where things worked out. They just need to be reminded that, their poop stinks like everybody else.
Because you've worked, like we were talking about all these great horror movies and franchises, but you've also worked on like franchises like Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise.
Yes. Yes.
And you've had to work in the chair with Tom Cruise. I mean, I'm sure he's come to your studio and worked before, or you've had to go to his wherever the film's being made and work with him there. And like I mentioned, Christopher Walken earlier too.
Oh, yes. Christopher was great. Doing the Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman makeup on him. He was great. It wasn't terribly difficult. Pretty much I think we had eyebrow blocks on him and then teeth and then this whole highlight and shadow, but it was a fairly quick makeup. Tom was interesting when we back in the day. This is before the jumping on the couch on the Oprah show and the whole thing with Katie Holmes, him losing his wife and kid, to when they snuck out at night or the whole story. This is before that. And I think, Tom was a big star, and he still is a big star. I still can't, whenever a Tom Cruise picture comes on, the man's a superstar. I mean, he can act, and I think, he's been cheated out of Oscars. He should have won for Jerry Maguire, and things. And, he's a movie star. He's just got charisma. He's got everything. But it was at that peak, and when we were doing Mission Impossible 2, because Mission Impossible 1 was a big hit. Now it's the second one, John Woo's directing, and so I got the call that he's going to come over for the head cast. And I was told, we've got 1 hour, by his people called and said, we got 1 hour. And then they said, listen, Tom's very busy and he doesn't have any time. So we need to know how many, when we pull the limo up with him, we need to know how many, steps it is from the parking lot or where the car will be stopped to the front door. They said, don't tell us in feet. Don't guess 20 feet. We just know, we need to know in steps. I'm thinking my stepping gait is going to be different than anybody else's, but okay. So we hung the phone up and I went out and counted them out in steps, as much of a normal step as I could take. Okay, so it's 20 steps to the front door. So we call him back. Okay, so it's 20 steps. Okay, now once he gets in the building, they didn't tell me this before. The first phone call, they made me call back and tell him the second time. They said once he gets inside the building, how many steps is it to where we're actually going to be doing the live cast? Okay, let me call you back. So anything else? No, that's it. Okay. Hang up. So that was the kind of thing that sometimes I get, like John Travolta, you get food requests. John Travolta was at my place and for Face Off, and he wanted a chicken and a salad, all from different places, and then a pizza. That's what he wanted. And you get those kind of requests, but never how many steps and and a time limit. No one's ever really. Sometimes when you're on set and you have to I had to take Robert De Niro's hand cast, and I only had like 15 minutes to do that because it was in between shots that they were setting up for. So. And I said Robert De Niro, right? Yeah, because it was Robert De Niro.
Right.
This is a movie called The Fan, but with Tom, and so it was kind of, and again, this 1 hour thing was tight, to do everything, and because you want to relax him, you don't want to just jump in the chair, do it, and then get out. So he walks in, and I had this sort of long hallway. I had this front entrance and then the long hallway, and my brother leaves his office, comes out to say hi to Tom. Tom just ignored him, blew him off, and then I see him, and I stopped him to shake his hand. And I said, well, okay, he started clapping his hands like, okay, where are we going to do this? Here, where? Let's go. We got 1 hour. Let's go.
Right. Cheerleader.
I gotta slow this guy down. I just don't want to be, already the whole thing of calling ahead with the steps and how many steps was making me nervous. You got a big star in your studio, and you just want to stay calm and do the right thing. You don't want to make any mistakes and, gouge his eyes or something by mistake or something. But, so I just said, okay, it's going to be back in here. And he's like, okay, yeah, 1 hour. And he was just real, wired, I said, before we get into this, I had to show you something. He said, we don't have time. I said, yeah, I think you have time to see this. I just ignored him, pulled him over, and I had John Travolta and Nicolas Cage from Face Off, their full entire bodies, sitting, under glass. They were under plexiglass. And I turned them on, and they were breathing, and their faces were twitching. They had rapid eye movement. Their jaws are moving, like as if they're in comas, because they were for this operation scene. And he was like, oh my gosh. Now here he's looking at contemporary, people he's probably lost jobs to, or they compete against each other in some way. So he was respectful of who the subjects were, but also that, these bodies looked pretty decent. And he was like, wow. And after that, I had him. We were talking about horror movies. We talked about The Hidden. You saw the things on my wall, and we just went on and on and on and that 1 hour turned into 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours he stayed. And I kept saying, I'm sorry, I need to get you out of here. No, it's cool. So it was just all a big thing. He decides whether or not, you can waste his time. So and he was just like, I have an older brother who's an actor, just like my brother. Tom and I have a lot in common, as far as we wrestled in high school. We were only 2 weeks apart in age, we're sort of the same age, and it was great. And then we got to set, and things kind of got, again, a little hairy. He was also producing, I don't know if he produced the first film, but he was producing. And he had this kind of error about, he's an actor, so I think he was playing the part of a producer.
Right.
And so he was kind of like, it was again this whole time thing, keep things going, and it was a little agitated, and that was one that I had to kind of, I had to walk away at one point, and pass my makeup brush on to. We were gluing the mask down, and he was. The masks aren't real comfortable. They're, in this pandemic, we're all wearing masks, right? So if you've got to go to the Home Depot and you got to wear a mask, you got to talk to somebody for more than a few seconds, you start to, hyperventilate almost, because those masks aren't really comfortable. So it's imagine that, but also now you're just breathing through two little nostril holes, and you can see out of it, but that's about it. And he was getting, I think, a little claustrophobic, and so he getting a little agitated. And at one point he kept arguing with me about where if the movie, when they peel the mask off, there's a little sticker that sticks on that changes their voice, to be whoever they're playing, whatever actor they're playing. So he'd peel that off and then he'd throw that away. So he'd peel the mask off and peel this little throat thing off. And he kept telling me that the throat thing was too high. I was gluing it too high, but the glue that I used was actually collects dust. So dirt and stuff. So it ends up turning dark pretty quickly. And I could tell exactly where I first glued it, from the sweat and dirt. And so I was able to glue it right back in the same spot. And he kept saying, no, it's too high. So I kept lowering it. And it ended up, must have been 2.5 inches by the time we got done, and he just kept, and he was being really pushing me, like, beyond. I'm just trying to make the thing fit on, and it just took seconds to put on. But he just was impatient, and I just turned and told my assistant Mitch, and I said, Mitch, you're gonna have to finish this up, because we were tacking it down in different places just to keep it aligned with his eyes. And I passed off the brush and walked off the set. And anyway, that was just a thing that happens sometimes. So you do get people who are, beyond that, he was okay, but you get people that are great, and you get people that are not so great. I think, of all the horror icons I've done, definitely, Robert was the kindest and nicest person to work with.
I was watching Sleepy Hollow the other night to kind of when I'm lining up guests and I'm kind of doing my research, and I want to make sure I'm refreshing myself, because I've seen Sleepy Hollow a number of times, but it's a 20-year-old movie, and I caught it.
I know, isn't it? That's crazy. Talk about time.
So you got Christopher Lee in this movie. You've got you got Johnny Depp in this movie.
Yeah.
Christopher Walken. Just a fantastic cast, and then I kept seeing your name. I didn't realize at the time, it didn't occur to me that you worked on the screenplay. You worked you had a producer's credit. You did effects for it.
Yes, I have 5 credits in that. I always tell people my name appears more than Tim Burton's,
right.
Which is great.
Right. And Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, it's like, wow. There's a lot of cooks with that soup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing is with Francis, I came as an idea, it's Washington Irving's old story, from 200 years ago that he wrote. And it's always been a favorite of mine from a storybook that I had when I was a kid. And so I wanted to do something with it, and as I started getting into Tales from the Crypt, I began to direct all the wraparounds for the Crypt Keeper. And I did 2 episodes of Tales, and I really wanted to I was looking for a feature. So the 2 episodes of Tales landed me an agent. And the next thing I know, they said, no, we need to develop something with you. I said, well, I'm kind of busy with his effects stuff. I'd love to write, but I need a partner. So they said, well, listen, there's a guy here. He's a new kid. He brought in a script that's really hot right now. Everyone's vying for it, called Seven. That they ended up, making the movie and with Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt. And it was a great, fantastic script. And the guy's name was Andrew Kevin Walker. I just knew him as Andy Walker. And we met, and I pitched my idea of Ichabod Crane as a detective, because the original story really is about Ichabod Crane eating food and getting chased one night by Brom Bones, and he throws a pumpkin at his head and he runs off, and no one ever sees him again.
Right.
The question is, and it's kind of boring, but the whole thing is about the chase. So I wanted to build something bigger than that. So I kind of pitched this idea, I did pitch the idea to Andy, and then he said, yeah, let's do this. And so we spent, months at my house, up in my workroom, just bashing out the story, got it to a pitch level, to a pitch form, and then we took it around town. And one of the people we took it to was Coppola's company. Now, I never met Francis, but my wife worked with them on Peggy Sue Got Married. She did that with Francis, and she had great things to say, but I never got a chance to meet him. So I just went around with one of his people, kind of a lower end guy, a development guy. And we pitched it around town. He just came in with us, with, hey, interest in wanting to do it. And, hey, it's not bad to have Francis Ford Coppola's name, tagged onto this. So we went around, and that ended up running its course, and then that fell away. And we went around with several other people and pitched it. I pitched it to all my friends at Tales, Dick Donner, who'd done Superman, and Joel Silver, who produced all the Lethal Weapon movies. Mm-hmm. And, we went around, and no one really wanted to do it. So, it's that famous story, and everyone just turned it down. Same thing happened to Back to the Future. Everyone turns it down. So anyway, so we finally, Scott Rudin, a producer who was interested in Seven, and one of the guys that were vying for it didn't get it, but he was interested, wanted to have Andy Walker's next movie. So Andy mentioned, hey, this Sleepy Hollow thing that, he said, well, I want to hear it. Let's do the pitch. And it was like on a Friday. So we said, okay, well, we can come over the weekend. You want to come over? And so, yeah. So he came over to my house, and we pitched it in my dining room to him, and he bought it immediately. And so we went into, signing deals with Paramount. It was like this whole whirlwind just happened suddenly, because Scott had a first look deal with Paramount. So anything he wanted to do, they would green light. And so we started writing the script, and we've developed it further, Andy and I. And the reason that Randy gets we were both going to get screen, writing credit, but I was slated to direct. And so he said, listen, if you're going to be director, I want something on my own. Can I have this? We'll share co-writing or co-story by. I said, sure, at the time. I should have said no, absolutely, because I put a lot of work into that script. But he did do the majority of it, but I put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that I still get royalties, so that's nor here nor there, and it's a good thing. But so after that, there was a movie that came out called The Crucible with Daniel Day-Lewis, I think, and Winona Ryder.
Right.
At the time, it was the same kind of period. It was based on an Arthur Miller play, I believe, and it was it didn't do well. And I can't remember the studio, but it didn't do well. So Paramount was saying, well, this happens in Hollywood, one bad thing. And they say, well, period pieces of that period don't work. So they shelved the whole thing. They just took it, we had the script, we had finished it, polished it several times with Scott Rudin's, blessing. And then it just sat for 5 years over at Paramount. They didn't do anything with it. And then I'm off doing Bride of Chucky, and my brother sends me a fax from LA, and I'm in Toronto, Canada, doing this. And he sends me the front page of the Variety, which is the newspaper here in Hollywood newspaper, and it says Burton feels sleepy. And I was like, what is this? And I started reading. It's like Tim Burton's going to be doing Sleepy Hollow, and I'm like, no, he's not. I'm the director. And so I called my people. Next thing you know, Scott Rudin had told him, no, we bought it from Kevin. It's done. And it wasn't done. I mean, I had a great attorney who wrapped up all those credits for me and did a great job. I got, again, well, I ended up leaving because I met with leaving as director. I met with Tim, and I wanted him to direct because if Tim did the movie, it was a $60 million movie to produce. If Kevin Yagher did the movie, and I hate to talk about myself in third person, but if I did the movie, it would have been a $2 million movie. So right. I'm not stupid. So I went and he brought in, Johnny Depp, and then Scott Rudin brought in Christina Ricci. He'd worked with her, on Addams Family. So it was just a bigger thing, and I knew it. When I wanted to work with Tim, I had opportunities, or all, close, interviews with him on Edward Scissorhands and a couple other things, and I wanted the chance to work with Tim. So I was like, absolutely. So we had a meeting, and I said, listen, my contract says that I have to do the effects. Like, I'm locked; they can't get rid of me. The directing deal was that I get to direct 3 weeks, and then they could let me go. Regardless, that was the deal that they made with before Tim. And the reason was just to show, let them show, or let me show to them what I can do directing wise. But I never pushed that. I just said, let's just ignore that and forget about that, and we'll go on. So, but I brought Tim in, and I again showed him the face-off bodies, which came in handy again. And I showed him those and said, look, this is the kind of work that I can do, and hopefully you'll be okay with me. And I don't want to, push you on myself on you, but I'm kind of locked in. And he was cool. He was just happy not to have difficulty with me walking away from the directing. And again, I got paid off for directing. I got paid to co-produce. I got all these jobs, and it turned out to be, they took it in a way. A writer named Tom Stoppard came in who had done a Shakespeare in Love, and they brought him in to put more humor into it. And then certainly Tim's, his films have a lot of quirky humor. Johnny Depp, thinking of Edward Scissorhands, that's kind of like these quirky little jerky things that he does physically. So it kind of turned more into comedy, which at the time I was horrified. I was watching the first days on set and just going, oh my God, Johnny looks like he's doing Edward Scissorhands. He's just kind of jerking his head around. I said, this is just going to be horrible. This is not the real film that I pitched, or that Andy and I wrote. And Andy was not happy either. We're just kind of miserable. And then after a while, I was like, this is kind of working. This is sort of funny, and then there's still some scary stuff. And by the end, it ended up being not my film, not our film, it was not as serious. And they ended up, Tim wasn't a guy that liked to shoot a lot of exposition. Meaning, not in talking, but just in showing things. Like we plot the plot was laid out quite carefully that, the audience was going along with Ichabod. He discovered things, the audience did too. And Tim gets kind of bored with that stuff. He likes to move to the action, the funny stuff, whatever. So he would skip over lines. That's fine. I think he'd say stuff like, I think just by grabbing the gun, you get the idea, and it would move on. Well, the problem was when they cut it together and showed it in front of an audience, people were confused. I still think the film's a bit confusing, but people were confused about what was going on. So we had to go back and shoot scenes like the Miranda Richardson scene where she explains to Christina Ricci's character, what's going on in the story, which is a big writing no. You're not supposed to do that. But we ended up doing that. And, that bothered me too. So all these things, it's your baby. So you're like, they're combing the hair wrong on my baby or whatever it is. You just kind of, you don't
Right.
like the way they're dressing your baby. My baby doesn't look good. So it was that kind of thing. But it's Hollywood, and you have to have, thick skin. You can't be too sensitive. And in the end, it's a Halloween favorite. It always shows at Halloween, and it turned out to be, at the time, was Tim Burton's biggest box office to date at that time. So it was a big deal, and I look back on it fondly now, and I'm just happy it got made, because very few people have crossed over from makeup or makeup effects into directing and writing and producing. I'm in all the guilds, and it's been a great ride. So I'm actually happy that it even happened, and it's hard to recreate. It's like, you're Steven Spielberg, it's not hard, but if you're an average director, it's hard to get your second, your third gig, and if you're a writer, it's a struggle. You have to get lucky enough to get on a series that just goes nuts, and then you become famous. Or the first film out of the gate, is fantastic, and it's hard to get that second and third thing, and keep it going. And I found myself kind of wanting to go back to effects only. I mean, it's still interested in directing. I think I've had Cable Ace nominations. I've got an Emmy for directing, on a thing I did for Tales from the Crypt, and it I love it, but it's a lot of pressure on just the one person in charge. And, I had a horrible experience that kind of, I'll just mention what that was on Hellraiser 4. I directed Hellraiser 4, took my name off the film.
Was that an Alan Smithy direction?
It was an Alan Smithy, yes. Yeah. And I had to, because, I had an awful experience. It was the first of two films. I think was it Halloween 4 that they were making. Joe Chappelle, I think, was directing. He ended up coming in and replacing me on the reshoots of my film. But when I left,
I think Chappelle did number 5. I think.
Was it 5? Maybe it was 5. Then.
Or 6.
I think, yeah, maybe it was 6. You're right. Yeah. You probably know.
I think it was one with Daniel Farrens. Yeah, where his producer. Yeah,
it was one of, and he was off, but he got lucky, because his show, he shot that someplace else. Maybe in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know. He shot it elsewhere. I can't remember where it was. Wisconsin or someplace. Yeah. Idaho. And so he was not in New York and not in LA. I shot in LA, and we had horrible problems. We had fire on the set one time. We had a flood on the set one time. Our whole crew was non-union, and it struck, and we had to go union in the middle of the whole thing. Oh. And then I had Bob Weinstein to deal with, who was inexperienced. The real brains behind Miramax was his brother Harvey. So which funny enough, I never met, but they're two peas in a pod, I understand. But I was very close working with Bob, and he really didn't know the difference between a director and a producer. He would ask me producer questions about how many pennies we're spending on craft service, and he would go to my Nancy Stowe, my producer, who, by the way, had never produced anything. She was like a line producer, money person, and he would ask her questions about certain shots and how we were going to light something, so he really, the only person he did know was a writer. He knew what a writer did, but everything else, he was really ignorant. And he was also quite mad. He was just a very angry, moody person. I heard rumors that he was manic depressive, and he was on medication, and I'd see him come in rooms and fire people. I'd see him come in a room and be happy, and then leave the room for 5 minutes, come back sad. He would have me go to, after 12 hours, 14 hours of shooting, he'd have me drive back 45 minutes to Miramax, go up to his office, and sit and wait from a phone call that he was making from New York. So New York was, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm at 2 o'clock in, whatever, in LA time, and had to wait for him, sometimes up to an hour after, and trying to keep myself awake, just so he could tell me he wanted something that, he could have waited till the next day to tell me. And it was cruel. He was a cruel person. And I'm openly talking about it now because of the whole thing that happened with the Weinsteins. Yeah, they're just horrible human beings. They really are. And he was cruel, like I've never seen a human being be. I've worked with screamers. I've worked with very passionate producers. I've worked with very famous or infamous producers who were known to be hard and and sometimes violent. And this guy beats everybody, and just hands down, because I think you add that little stirring of insanity into the mix, and you end up with this person that, it was a horrible experience, And, again, sometimes things go really well and sometimes they don't. But that with directing, for me, that was kind of like, okay, I did go off and do some commercials. I did some more Tales from the Crypt stuff. And I actually directed a pilot for USA Network. And then it just, your agents kind of go, whenever you get blood on you in Hollywood, this is not horror blood, but when you get, this blood meaning, any kind of bad news or whatever, something happened on the set, people distance themselves. And my own agents kind of did that. Even though they were on my side, they agreed with everything I said and they supported me while it was happening. They just slowly stopped sending me out for things, because it was probably a hard sell, because when you get blood on yourself, you get something went wrong. So that kind of, and I switched agencies, and then it just became too hard. And I started getting more A films, effects wise. I went from, B plus films, movies to Starship Troopers and Face Off. And I started getting these films that I finally wanted to get when years before, and things were going really well. So I just rode that wave. And enjoyed every bit of it, So it's been a good ride, and I don't regret a thing. If you ask me now, would I take Hellraiser again? I would have said no, because there was another film that I should have taken that had absolutely no money. I think we had $4 million on Hellraiser, but I think this one was like under $1 million, and I should have taken that film because I would have had much more support and more creativity. But things happen in life, and you just have to roll with them.
Yeah, that's crazy that you're talking about, like the Weinsteins and everything. It's, it was probably earlier, dealing with Jason's machete and things like that than having to deal with.
Well, it is, and you're kind of in control, in my own studio. I'm in control. I did 12 years on the TV show Bones. Yeah. My daughter got to a certain age, and I was like, I need to stay around. She's 14, 15. Boys are coming up, and getting in trouble, and they'll be, temptations of alcohol, things. I wanted to be around. I didn't want to be off in some foreign land, so I stayed and I took Bones, and, we did, all that, the bone work and stuff like that for years and years and years. And that was, a good experience. I forgot what I was going to, but I brought up Bones again. I'm going blank all the time these days. I think it's COVID. COVID has gotten to my head. You should see me now. I've got this like 2-inch beard now. I've never had facial hair in my life. And so I think it's getting to my, did you feel that way? Do you feel like just totally like I feel like I'm also I just started about a month ago. I started a ketogenic diet. And I don't know if you know anything about that, but you don't eat any carbs. And so I find myself kind of a little spacey sometimes. And I think this has happened a couple times to me. I just go blank. I'm not losing my mind, I promise.
No, that's funny because I saw a picture. Well, I'll get a little personal here. Like around Christmas time, I saw a picture of myself and I did not like how I looked. And I'm like, oh man, I used to be this good looking young guy. Right. So I quit extra calories. I quit drinking beer, quit eating fast food, cut down on the pop, and then COVID happened. So then I was already maybe 15 pounds lighter and then there was quarantine and things like that. So I kind of cleaned out my body of toxins and then kind of went through this, quarantine and everything. Now here in Nebraska, we're on level, I don't even know how they categorize it, level 3. So we're able to go out and go to restaurants. You have to wear a mask where we live. Anytime you're out in a public building, our churches are open, our restaurants are open. Our movie theaters are opening up actually this weekend as we record this. So life's kind of getting back to normal, but I went through this life change right around Christmas time because I didn't like this photograph, and I don't have any special effects skills here in Omaha to make myself appear looking different. And then I grew a beard, and my wife actually kind of liked it. So I'm kind of rocking the beard for a little bit, but everybody's kind of emerging from their COVID caves a little bit differently. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like my beard. I mean, I can't grow an awesome beard. I'm not one of those guys that can grow it up to my eyeballs. It's like a jawline. If you cut my mustache off, I'd look like I'd be driving around in a horse and buggy, and not a Mormon, but what are they called?
Like a Mennonite?
Yeah, Mennonite or something. Yeah, so I have that kind of look. It's getting a little long, but I never knew I could actually even grow a mustache when I was a younger kid. I couldn't grow any facial hair, so I'm happy to see it, but it does get especially if you do any kind of yard work or anything, you get hot at all like that, it just gets itchy, and I have a feeling I'll be cutting it. I'm gonna try to hold on to it as long as I can, but I think I'm gonna be cutting it soon.
Yeah.
Just ultimately not me.
This is so much fun talking to you, because I was kind of thinking, like, when you're talking about putting the Freddy Krueger makeup on Robert and things like that. I remember when I was a little kid and I went to like the Five and Dime in town. There's a Woolworth. And so I wanted to be Freddy Krueger, and there was like a Don Post mask or something like that. And so I had that for a while, but it cracked, it slid up the back. And then I was Freddy Krueger for two Halloweens. And one time I thought, well, I'm going to make my own stuff. So I bought some kit at the store. And then I read something where you can add some stuff. So I added like a peanut, like I took a peanut, and mixed it in with like the it wasn't latex, whatever it was, stuck it to my face, and it looked gross. And my mom was like, cool mom. She's like, I don't get what why do you need Dad's hat? Why do you,
why'd you take the garden glove and the shears and make a glove out of it? What are you doing?
No, I actually took like cardboard and wrapped it in foil. Like for the blades, and, taped it on. Yeah, but it was on Dad's work glove. But I glued this concoction on my face and then rubbed black on there too, so I look burned. And I'm wearing my dad's hat, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, I guess that's your costume."
So you really are a fan.
Oh yeah, man. My friend Paul, who's an award-winning chef here in town, he was involved with the James Beard Foundation and all this stuff. We made movies with an old camera. It was made by Fisher Price, and you used actual cassette tapes like audio cassette tapes to record. I forget what it was called. You can look it up.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, I'll have to look it up. But so we made these movies, and he had a vacant lot across the street, and so we were like digging graves and and filming. We had this our own franchise. We only made like 2 movies out of it, but the guy was called the Slim Reaper. And the Slim Reaper was based on our school bus driver, who was just this kind of freak, and we kind of made fun of him and whatnot. But but the story was he went and slaughtered the kids that pissed him off on his bus route. So that was the Slim Reaper. And
Slim Reaper, was he slim?
Yeah, he was real skinny. He looked like he never ate, and I don't know. There's probably there's probably some drugs involved in there, and But yeah, as a fan, we used to do all these things. And I remember watching a documentary as a kid, like Entertainment Television would show like little specials, to kind of promote movies coming out. And one of them, maybe it was you putting makeup on Freddy Krueger, on Robert Englund. Yeah. But somebody's working around Robert, and Robert's like, what's Freddy's base color? Blood red. And
so you laugh afterwards.
Right. So like always, me and Paul, my friend that we make these horror movies with, we're always like, hey, what's Freddy's base color? Blood red. So that was the big joke for a year. But we made our own hockey masks because we didn't have Spirit Halloween back then. So we'd take cardboard and measure our faces and and paint them, and
that's how I got started. I mean, truly, I'm from Ohio, so I did that. My brother and I, my older brother Jeff was probably, we were 4 and 5 when we started like collecting Aurora model kits, plastic kits. And I just kind of followed his lead because he was the guy that he had a little bit more money than I had. He was older, and he'd buy the magazines, he'd buy Monsterland and Famous Monster, monster magazines. And so I got to kind of use all that. But we did that. I used to make this stuff we call it bread dough clay. It was just bread, like white. You cut the crust off. You take the white, the white part of the whatever Wonder Bread, and you mix it in with Elmer's glue, and it made a really. You could color it then with acrylic paint, and you could make it translucent a little bit too, and you would make teeth out of it and stuff like that, and spray it with crystal clear or something, and we made monsters out of it. So we just learned techniques that we'd either pick up in magazines or we just make up, the same kind of thing. We get that, take chicken wire, and then we take this moulage kind of paper mache stuff that they would sell. It was kind of like not powdery, but it was kind of chunky. You mix water in, and then it already had the glue in there, and then we'd make masks out of that. So that's how we did stuff like that. We made little films the same way, 8mm films. I think that's how almost every effects guy starts. Rick Baker did the same thing. you start with whatever you have around the house, and whatever mom will let you have, whatever fabric, that you could get from her, or an old curtain or something you'd make a mummy wrapping with or something like that. And so that's how we all trained early on, and just whether or not you kept going with it. A lot of times girls can be a distraction,
sure,
for people like me, and other things, and slows you down. But it wasn't. I remember the first stuff I did with rubber noses. There was this stuff you could buy at the hobby store called Mountains in Minutes latex. You could take that and kind of color it, and then you could paint up, make a nose or something, a witch nose, or or a broken nose, or whatever you were making. And I did a lot of that kind of work because we didn't have foam latex at the time. So then I finally graduated into foam latex, and then got better at the craft, and really still was just still a hobby. It was a dream, to get into business. It was just a dream. But I never thought, I'd ever get from Ohio to all the way back east to LA was like, forget about it. How are you going to get there? It's going to cost you money. How are we going to stay? And I just kept it up, and then finally got a hold of Dick Smith. Do you know him? He's the one that did The Exorcist.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to talk to one of the last things. Well, go ahead. Tell me about Dick Smith, because I was going to bring us some Dick Smith.
I sent some, pictures of me as an old man. I sent him pictures I did, Planet of the Apes type of, albino version of the Planet of the Apes character, and sent those to him. And he wrote me back and said, listen, I'm going out of town for 3 months. He was going to go off and do Amadeus and the movie Amadeus. And he said, when I get back, call me. Here's my phone number at this time. And so I did. And of course, after 3 months of hard work, he completely forgot who I was. And I had to remind him. And he said, hold on, let me get your file. This man kept a file on everybody. I'm not kidding you. Wow. You sent him everything. He never tossed it out. This man was, they don't make him like this anymore. I mean, no one does this stuff. I mean, he kept us all communicating. He kept us all sharing ideas. And when he finally retired, that sort of dried up, and people became vicious competitors. Oh. But Dick kept us really kind of nice. He was like a grandfather, just saying, no, play nice. But he had a file on me. And so he said, oh, yes, I remember you. And then he just said, listen, you need to move to LA or New York. You can't stay in Ohio. There's no work there. So he gave me some names to go look up. He's, Rob Bottin, Rick Baker, and then Greg Canham was the one that I got a hold of finally. And because I heard Greg was going to be doing The Howling too, and I had to get on that, because I was a big fan of The Howling and American Werewolf in London. And
oh yeah.
And so I called him up, and then went in to see him, and then got a job. And one of the first things we did was the Thriller, but so I was working for Greg, and Greg was working with Rick, and then we did that was not Invaders from Mars. I did with Stan Winston, some other film, some other space film, and then we did Ozzy Osbourne's makeup, and then Friday the 13th. So we just kind of progressed into there, and that's the way I first started.
Yeah, you hung out with all these guys. They're contemporaries, they're teachers, mentors, and to me, these are guys that I know all their names because I used to go and read Fangoria magazine.
Yes, there you go. There you go. I mean, Fangoria, I'm really my career. I owe them that career. Fangoria did some great articles on me.
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody that was my age, really excited about horror movies. We knew who Dick Smith was. We know who Kevin Yagher is. We know who Tom Savini is. We know who Rick Baker is. We know all these things. So, so in the time that we have remaining, and I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. Just I wanted to do this for so long. And
good. And sorry about the delay too. I know that you've been trying, and
I've
just been busy.
No. Hey man, I just send feelers out, and people get back to me, and I'm like, great, we'll set it up when we can, because all these great things that we've been talking about, we can talk about them at any time. So, as me, movie going Joe Public guy sitting in the theater, and I see all these great effects, and I wrap my brains around how does this happen? How do you film this? How do you make this effect and everything? When you go to a movie, and I know you've got all this experience, and I don't want to say you're jaded, but you know how these gags get produced. Do you ever sit back, or have you ever sat back in a theater eating popcorn just like everybody else? You see an effect on the screen, and you're like, wow, how did so and so do that? I mean, do you ever whoa?
Well, these days with that, it's all mostly computer digital stuff, so they can do anything, and so you're not. It's funny because you're not wild. I used to do that. I used to go in and see things, and Rob Bottin's done some fantastic stuff. I remember things, some fake heads that he did, even on on Total Recall and things like that. Some of that was groundbreaking stuff, that he had done, or Rick Baker, But nowadays, even effects can be even, they can be, touched up, and so I'm not kind of wowed anymore as I used to be. What I do like doing now is going back to films, sitting in a movie theater or something, not recently, but because of COVID, but just watching films and trying to be more of a participant as an audience member. You do get jaded after time, especially if you know somebody, like you're watching something and you go into it knowing that he got the job and you didn't, so you're going to be more critical, or how things are done. You do get kind of jaded about things. It's like, it doesn't make it. So I'm enjoying now, like enjoying television. I got into a show called Peaky Blinders, and just like, I'm enjoying being nothing to do with effects or whatever, but, it's just a film. I'm just enjoying being entertained now as I get older. You're kind of like, I'm just trying to pretend like what it was. Cause the funnest part about being an audience member, when you're a kid is being that audience member, just losing yourself. I remember, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark was a film that just took me into this world, and Jaws too. It's just like I just felt I was there. And when you get into film, you don't experience that anymore. You're watching a movie. The score's a little too much, on this film. I mean, you're talking not just about effects. You're looking at everything. The director of photography has lit this way too bright, or something, whatever. And you start analyzing. And I'm trying to just let go of all that as I get older and get back into enjoying why I got it in the first place. That's the funnest part. It's the funnest time, and it's never going to be. It's always the first time of anything, is always fun. The first time you do anything, drive a car or whatever, but also watching movies was so exciting, and it does lose its excitement once you get into it. So I'm trying to I'm able to kind of forget about what I'm watching and really enjoy myself, in that. I wanted to mention one before I go to that I've got Face the Music coming out. I did the third installment of Bill and Ted. I've done all three films. I did some cavemen for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Then Bogus Journey came. I did all the effects for that. That was a kind of really tough, hard film. Wasn't in love with all the stuff I did, and then Face the Music came up, and I got a call, and I was like, yes, I have to do it. And the budget was really tight, but I didn't care. I was just like, I have to be a part of this. I'm not letting this go to somebody else. I was a part of the other movies, and I want to be a part of this one. So I got to do some fun stuff with Keanu and Alex again, and some fun makeup. So you'll see August 28th. It's coming out. It's been moving around. The date's been going to the 1st, and now it's September 1st, and now it's back to the 28th. So you can. I'm just going to plug it. You can order it on video on demand, and there are some theaters. There may be a theater in Omaha actually that may be showing it. But we did some fun stuff. I did it with some muscle suits. I can talk about that are that were put on Keanu and Alex in 100-degree heat in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was unbearable, and these guys sweated out in these things. In fact, we didn't have a chance to really even blend in anything. It just wasn't time. So we did that digitally. So the blend in around the neck, and there's a back zipper, and we'll get smoothed over and blended in with digital effects. So, but that was a fun thing. That's one of the things, one of the many things I did on that show that's coming out.
I can't wait to see that. And I've really had a lot of fun talking to you, and I've had so much fun also going back.
Yeah, me too.
Going back and looking at all the great movies and all the productions and everything. 'Cause it's just, I'm waxing nostalgic here because I remember all these things from when I was a kid. But I mean, you're still going. It's not like you're done and you're retired and you're not doing this stuff anymore.
No,
I mean, you've got a movie coming out next week.
That's right. I've slowed down some. I've also produced a short film that I co-financed and helped. We raised some money on Kickstarter. It's called Grummy, and it's about a monster a girl's fantasy monster. She goes into her closet to get away from some abuse that she's experiencing. And this monster's real in her mind. When she goes into a closet, the whole world, it becomes real. And the monster kind of saves her life. And it's a short film, but the hope is that we can develop it further into a film. So I'm just keeping busy. Things have slowed down, but it's especially now
right.
with the pandemic. But hopefully things will kick up. talking to, Matrix people about working on part 4. We'll see if that happens or not for me, but they're shooting that in Berlin right now. Again, that's a Keanu Reeves thing. And so Keanu called me in, so I may be doing that. I'm not sure it's going to work out, but, so I haven't retired. I'm still working, but I'm looking forward to retirement, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, big fan, really excited just to put this episode together. These kind of conversations are why I wanted to do a podcast, to reach out and have conversations and interact with these people, not with stars in my eyes or anything, but like to ask questions and have conversations and just kind of explore the parts of Hollywood that I always enjoyed, and for you to take the time out with somebody who's a fan and to kind of tell your story and explain things to myself and to all the other fans out there. I really want to thank you for doing that. It's really nice of you to do that, to take the time out and talk to me and everybody else that's listening. Absolutely.
It was a pleasure. I really had fun myself. Sometimes you answer a lot of questions that are generic, and it was fun just to talk and let loose and do it more natural. I had a good time.
If you're just going to ask questions, you're just going to get answers. I wanted to have some conversation and like we're having a beer together or something like that. Even though I'm not drinking beer right now, we'll have a cup of coffee or some kind of keto approved snack.
Keto friendly. Yeah.
All right, sugar. Everybody, I've had the pleasure of talking to Kevin Yagher here on this episode of the Necronomicast. Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have been listening to another episode of the Necronomicast. Recorded, produced, mixed, edited in Omaha, Nebraska. The River City. That was a lot of fun to talk to Kevin Yagher. It's so crazy to think back, like when I was a kid and I was watching all these movies that he worked on, all the work he did with Freddy Krueger and all that, and now he's on this little show. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Andrew Vogt, for this music that we're listening to right now. As we record and put this out, it's the middle of September 2020. And for October of 2020, there's going to be, I think, 4 shows for October. It's going to be our Shocktober Extravaganza. But we'll see. We'll see how those plans work out. I think they're all going to come out. We'll see. Anyway, this was episode number 187 of the Necronomicast. Copyright 2020. Now go get some sleep.